Spoilers to follow. Wolfman is the new Universal Studios horror movie that's based on their iconic black and white horror film from 1941, in which a man is bitten by a werewolf and slowly starts to turn into a werewolf himself. This movie stars Christopher Abbott as some guy named Blake, who's this unemployed writer who lives in the city with his wife Charlotte and his daughter Ginger. And he's struggling with his marriage when he learns that his dad, who has mysteriously disappeared years ago, has died. He and his family go out to Oregon to pack up his dad's house and move his things out, when things take a nasty turn. They get into an accident on the side of the road when some mysterious wolf creature steps in front of them. They have to hide in Blake's childhood home to escape whatever it is this Wolfman is, and hope it just doesn't get them. And there's just one issue. The entire movie is broken. The structure never works. We never see what makes this Wolfman a Wolfman. We never see where he comes from. We never see Blake's dad disappear. We're told it happens, but it never actually happens on screen. And in the opening act, we never see this Wolfman kill or attack anyone. Even in the opening sequence, where we see Blake's survivalist dad teaching him that there are dangerous animals out in the woods and he has to protect himself, we never get to see any good, juicy Wolfman action. It's just frustrating. The movie opens with this massive block of text, explaining that some hiker disappeared years ago and reappeared deformed and changed. The text says that there's some name for it called Face of the Wolf. They also say that this was called Hill's Fever, which I think throughout the movie people are going to be calling it Hill's Fever, but it's never brought up. Also, there's no shot of the moon in this. I know you don't have to include a moon, but it's just such a glaring omission when you associate werewolves with moons. Werewolves are just iconic in horror movie cinema, and this movie just seems to avoid doing anything unique or different. This opening block of text even says that there's some name for this virus called Face of the Wolf, and anyway, at this point, which is like less than a minute into the movie, I already knew this movie would be pretty bad when they're explaining to me that there's this history of the Wolfman. Like, I go to a movie like this because I want them to tell me this. I want them to show it to me, not tell me over text. When there's been Wolfman remakes like every 20 years and they've inspired plenty of other werewolf horror, I want a new original take, especially when you have the rights to The Wolfman, which is one of the most iconic Universal horror movies. So you might as well use that, and they don't really use it at all. If you're gonna make a movie, you might as well show us, not tell us. And I already knew this movie would be pretty and it would have some nice shots, which it did, but it wasn't really going to deliver a great, creepy horror movie, because why explain in writing what a movie meant to be told visually should be doing? And there are good horror movies that use their opening text to build and draw out horror, unlike Wolfman. For example, Jordan Peele's Us opens with this mysterious few sentences describing how there are thousands of miles of abandoned tunnels under the United States and no one knows their purpose. And that itself is kind of creepy. It builds mystery and tension, and it makes the viewer interested to see what's going to happen with that. It's not telling us something crucial to understand the plot. More, it's just giving us a reason to be excited for what's to come. Wolfman just straight up gives plot information, mind you, what could be the creepiest part of the plot, and it's written as text, because they compress the story so much, and it just represents how flat this movie actually is. If the first minute of the movie is all written exposition, unless, say, you're a sequel that came out 35 years later, like Blade Runner 2049, it's usually a red flag that the movie is not going to be that great or daring. I go to the movies to see these horror stories play out on screen, not to be told a brief history of the lore of the movie, which never even factors into the plot, except for a line later where Julia Garner realizes that the original wolf that attacked her husband is actually his father, who disappeared years ago. It's meant to be this shocking moment, but like, the Wolfman pokes the guy's sleeve up and notices a tattoo, and it's like, oh, that's his dad. But we've only seen the dad in the opening scene. We never even saw him disappear, let alone get attacked by wolves. I guess it's safe to assume we know what happened to him. He was a victim of the Wolfman, but the movie building its whole ending and kind of emotional catharsis on that is just nothing. Like, who gives a fuck if the Wolfman was his dad? I don't even think anyone cared about these characters to begin with. You watch a movie like this, you generally want the characters to be safe. You know, it's a family. Christopher Abbott, Julie Garner, and the young actress who play their daughter are really excellent performers. You can tell they really do want to do a great job, and they're great actors. But with the script, where the dialogue is so bad, like, Julia Garner is so accepting when she realizes that the Wolfman's his dad. Like, how does she put that together? Like, it just would make no sense. And she just tells her daughter so casually, like, oh, your daddy's dad disappeared years ago, and we thought he was dead, but he actually got sick, and now he infected daddy. Like, what? how is she so chill with this? It really makes no sense. Like, she has to say that with a straight face, and also, how's her character just deducing all of this and so chill with this? And also, like Ariana DeBose in Kraven the Hunter, which, funny enough, Chris Abbott was also in. This movie has that syndrome where they just give Julia Garner all these abilities and we're just supposed to accept it at face value. Like, fair enough, she's smart and can hotwire a car and thinks on her feet, but she has, like, insane survival instincts, grabbing a knife to protect herself from the Wolfman. She locks her daughter in her room so she's safe and goes out to confront the Wolfman herself. She locks them in a barn, barricades the door. She sneaks around in the dark to lure the Wolfman to this bear trap that she fastens to the wall. Like, she says at the beginning she's a journalist, but, like, there's no build-up or setup and payoff as to how this woman can do any of this. And also the final battle, if we can call it that, where I felt the movie was climaxing, I actually began to get this awkward feeling of secondhand embarrassment because of how underdeveloped this whole thing was. And here I am, watching two random wolfmen, one of whom I kinda know and can understand, the Chris Abbott character, but he's like snarling around and snapping at this other wolfman guy in the kitchen. And it's just like, I have no investment in any of this except hoping this family gets out of it, safe. But for a movie, it's just so bare bones with its emotion and its story, respecting its audience. It sucks because there's some really good ideas here that just get totally squandered by this ridiculously hard to pull off story. So when these two wolves are fighting, it's like, who cares? Why should I care? And then on top of that, like, it actually turns out it's his dad. Like, if we knew that before, I think it would be way more interesting. You'd be like, oh shit, he's fighting his dad, but you find out after. And it sucks, because it really could have been cool in a way. But I think the Hollywood beats of it totally ruin it. There's a Wolfman movie out there that's much more slow, much more indie, and much more darker, probably. That's the movie I wanted to see, much less Hollywood. And that remake probably would have been amazing. Like a really hopeless, really tragic movie about a man trying to protect his family and just utterly failing. This tries to do that, but it is such a Hollywood bullshit circus of cliches and running around and doing nothing. I really wanted to put on that cartoon chase music during so many of the scenes, because they're just running from a house to a barn, to a car, back to the house, back to the barn. Not to mention all the family stuff and Chris Abbott trying to protect his daughter and trying to reunite with his wife when they get caught up in this Wolfman shit. Like, I don't know, it all sounds super promising, but the addition of the Wolfman is just such a hard concept to nail down. You want to understand what makes this thing tick, where it comes from. Even if you don't know where, you just want to know the rules of the world. Because the mystery is interesting. The unknown and not knowing where something comes from is frightening, inherently. But having these characters just kind of get stranded at this house, and then eventually one of them turns and has like a battle with another Wolfman, it's just not enough at all for a horror movie to be entertaining. And it's such a hard concept to believe. A man can turn into a freaking wolf. That you really need to build up in this world and make it all seem real. Or at least have this sense of dread and hopeless doom approaching. This movie doesn't have that because it's so stripped down to the classic Hollywood beats. And also a good example of this is the main character's failing marriage. Like, why is their marriage failing? This is the whole crux for why they go on this trip. Like, what's wrong with this couple? All we know is he's unemployed and the wife is working. Sure, I mean, that could cause stress, but to base your entire movie's emotional dynamic and heart and the theme of protecting those you love around that, it's just so flat. Because there's not really anything that deep to latch onto. We know the parents are going through marriage issues with a cute daughter they both love. Of course, we're going to root for things to work out, but there's nothing on top of the very basic essentials here. And what's really interesting is Derek Cianfrance and Ryan Gosling worked on this movie initially. Apparently, they both pitched it to Universal, but when that fell through, Leigh Whannell took over. And I don't think it's not that Leigh Whannell can direct. He's an awesome director. He made Insidious 3, Upgrade, The Invisible Man. And The Invisible Man in 2020 was a huge hit. Even before the pandemic shuttered theaters, it made a ton of money. And this movie cost $25 million. And it's very clear because there's no other locations. The actors are like good actors, but they're not huge A-listers. And you could tell all the budget went to the Wolfman makeup. But I was watching this and I could tell it cost $25 million. And I was thinking, there's no way this is going to make back its budget. It just seems like a movie no one's going to see. Who wants to see a Wolfman movie? Like, who is like, I gotta see this in January? That's why it's a friggin' January movie. But it's interesting because The Invisible Man worked, because that movie had themes that were kind of realistic and grounded in reality. It took this approach to dealing with domestic violence and toxic relationships, and it tied it into this neo-sci-fi horror movie that just hit all the right notes, and it worked at feeling scary and at least entertaining. And and it had a message and theme that was real and that, people can latch onto. Wolfman just doesn't work from a fundamental level of what it sets out to be, which is scary and entertaining and having a beating heart. It doesn't really accomplish any of those elements, or at least go strong with them. I thought this movie was perfect schlock. It was not great, but it had good performances, compressed setting, and decent enough visual appeal to make this movie entertaining, and at least one of those movies that feels like it would be on Tubi in the future. But right now, I'm seeing it on an IMAX screen, and it's just really not that great of a movie. It's slowly paced. It always feels like it's dragging just a bit. It's never too scary. And the jump scares are incredibly drawn out. It's like the body horror transformation bit of it is really cool, but it never fully feels like it's that effective. The makeup is good too, but honestly, I wanted a little more fur on this Wolfman. I don't know if you guys agree. They made him just too human. I get that they were going for this virus infection, but they should have at least had the final Wolfman design be like more fur, more of a wolf. It just never feels like enough. It always feels like we're right on the edge of being something really interesting, but something is holding it back like this tow cable. That's making this dark family drama about becoming something or someone you don't want to be, about wanting to protect your family but accidentally putting them into harm's way. It's such a good idea, but it just turns into this cheesy, shitty horror movie that's going to play with commercials on replay on TBS. No offense to TBS. But movies like this are interesting because you can see how a cool idea started out really promising, but through a rotating door of directors and writers and just through the Hollywood machine, the idea and vision got diluted down. And I'm interested to see Derek Cianfrance's original version, mostly because he's made some great movies about struggling relationships and families, but you gotta think how much a studio like Blumhouse or Universal would be willing to bet their box office potential on a film that could play like a low-budget drama. Instead, it's just this soulless, pretty-looking film at times. I did like the sound design a lot. There's a really cool scene with the spider. It has really great moments in here, but it's just so boring and so dragged out. It's really just mindless fun that occasionally drags. I do like schlock, I really do love good old cheesy horror movies. You could say it's not so bad it's so good. It's just one of those random stupid monster flicks that could be so much better. It has potential that I hate to see wasted. It also does that awful time-lapse thing where it's night the whole movie, and then in 2 minutes at the end, it just goes to sunlight mood. I get it, it's effective for the atmosphere, but at least build up the change, at least show the sunrise, have someone be like, it's almost sunrise. I hate when it's night, and then the next minute, it's day. It's frustrating. The only movie that successfully pulls that off mid-battle day to night transition was Avatar 2, because they show there's an eclipse going on. Spider-Man No Way Home failed at this too, so Wolfman, you're not alone. And another reason this movie sucked, I might have mentioned this before, they have a full moon on the poster. I didn't even think about it till I got out, but how do they not include that? Werewolves come out at the full moon. Honestly, I get the choice to omit that. Maybe it wasn't right for the story, maybe they thought about it, they probably definitely did. But at least just friggin' show a full moon. I don't know, there's just something missing about this movie. It feels like this is a Wolfman movie in name only. It's some bad, cheap horror movie that's pretending to be a remake of The Wolfman, if that makes any sense. I don't know, its soul is just not there. This is just one of those movies that is perfect January movie. I really liked the wolf vision, I'll say that. That was one of the strong elements. I did like the relationship between the father and the daughter. I think they really did get a good hook at what this movie could do right, but it's missing all of those core elements. Like I'm saying, with the marriage or the rushed pacing. The pacing is just really bad. And because it spends so much time in one location, without really developing that location, if they had slowly built up, there's other rooms in the house, or the barn and the greenhouse and the car, and they made those moments really feel like they count, I think it would be more entertaining. But there's just so much running back and forth, and the location gets kind of boring. It is just really a movie I could never fully lock into. So I didn't really like the Wolfman movie. I really wanted to like it. I really was excited for this movie. I love horror. I love Universal monsters. But this was just so full of promising ideas that never get fully realized, and you can tell that it's a movie that's right on the edge of being something great, but there's something missing. So it's not a terrible movie, it's just a really, really frustrating movie that honestly disappointed me. And it ends with an L, which is hilarious. A lot of people are pointing that out. There's just so many confusing choices in this movie. Yes, it's directed by Lee Winnell, but for some reason he chooses to have the L appear, and then his name. It's just kind of funny. Also, the end credits song is such a weird choice. Stay for the end credits. They play this pop song kind of the end, and I'm just what the fuck? feels like it does not match the tone at all. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next review.